In the UK, there are 14.1 million people with a disability. 8% of children and 19% of working adults have some sort of physical impairment or learning difficulty. As we know, there are many improvements to be made within society so that they can work, travel, and be part of some of the day-to-day things some of us take for granted. But what about gaming? With PlayStation's tagline being "Play has no limits" and Xbox's new tagline of "Powering your dreams," do they truly reflect those wanting to enjoy games? One of the earliest and most notable ways the industry had tried to make gaming more accessible was in difficulty level. A Noxus Crosses game in the 1950s had featured a difficulty level for the AI, making it more accessible. Atari did something similar too with their games, although it could be argued those changes weren't necessarily made with accessibility in mind, but more so for the inclusion of young children. For a while, this was the only change to make gaming more accessible, but the power shifted from mega companies to developers and studios themselves, as more and more games try to feature more options. Now, we have games like Celeste and Gears 5 who are making almost every part of the game accessible, and YouTube channels like Game Maker's Toolkits explaining how to create games with accessibility in mind and in-depth looks at what works and potentially what doesn't work within games, making games more accessible for the industry overall. Arguably, one of the greatest additions to the accessibility toolkit might be Xbox's adaptive controller, used and modified by gaming charity Special Effect.
Special Effect are the gamers charity. We make and modify video game equipment for people with physical disabilities. So we work all up and down the UK. We will send out a team of occupational therapists to people's homes and basically help them to play video games and enjoy the fun and inclusion and community of this crazy world. So an example of how we might use an adaptive controller for someone with limited movement, we actually have a demo on our stand at Comic-Con here of Untitled Goose Game, which is playable with your chin. So all of our demos are very simple examples of what we might set up for someone. All of our work is done completely bespoke per that individual. So someone will get in touch and tell us who they are, what they want to play, what movement they currently have and how they want to play their game. And we will try our best to make that happen. So we work with all ages, all people up and down the UK, and all games as well. So any game taste, you can get in touch and we'll try and help you play. Well, we see a lot of gamers really gain their confidence back when they are able to interact with the friends and communities that gaming brings to you. I mean, if you're a gamer, you know what kind of escapism and community your favorite video game brings to you, no matter what that is. So it's accessing those communities. I've seen some of our case studies where we have people who have gone on to complete university courses after we've set them up with systems. So it's really incredible to see what difference it makes to people, and not to sound too corny, but just the smiles on people's faces in the videos that we show on stand speak 1,000 words. There's one of my favorite case studies is a little lad called Corey, and his laugh at the end of the video after he's just scored a goal honestly says more than I could say in hours of blabbering on about Special Effects. It says it all. So yeah, that's the kind of difference that the fundraising that the gaming community is helping us to make. So the way that we get in touch with people, 90% of our referrals come through word of mouth. A huge percentage come through word of mouth. So videos like this and people doing blogs and streams for us are incredibly important. Again, to reference the video of Corey, his dad was actually told about us through someone who worked at Game. They had just finished a fundraiser for Game Blast, our yearly streaming fundraiser, and Corey's dad Lee came in and said, look, my son needs an adaptive controller, is there anything you guys sell? They said no, but have you heard of Special Effect? So mainly through word of mouth, that kind of thing. Occasionally we do work quite closely with a few hospitals up and down the country, and if they have someone that we can maybe help with our Stargaze project, which is a project where we set people up with eye gaze controllers who have maybe been in catastrophic accidents and been paralyzed, that sort of thing. They will give us a call and say, hey, we've got a family here that you might be able to help. That's actually how Rob Cam was introduced to us, the chap who has recently completed a university course, and he's amazing. He does like Tough Mudder runs in his wheelchair for us, and he's absolutely brilliant. He's a fantastic human being. But yeah, so long story short, mainly word of mouth, but shows like this are really helpful as well to talk to people and say, hey, maybe we can help with that. I spoke to like 3 people on the first day of Comic-Con who we could probably help, either them or their family members. So yeah, so Special Effect is a lifetime service. We will be with someone throughout their entire gaming life. So we understand that conditions change over time, some conditions deteriorate, and tastes in games change. So we're never going to, leave someone with, FIFA 17 and be like, okay, play that now for the rest of time. We'll always do repeat visits, reassessments, and make sure that their system and their setup is safe and ergonomic for them. So yeah, it's an ongoing service. We're in touch with people for as long as they want us to be, basically. Yeah.
My name is Lee. My son Corey is 6 years old. He's hemiplegic down the left-hand side as a result of a prenatal stroke. And he used to watch his brother playing games. We would give him a controller that wasn't connected, just so he felt involved. And I did ask a few people when I was out about if they knew of any controllers that I could buy for him so that he could play himself. And no one seemed to know anything about them. And then just by chance one day went into game, and I asked one of the assistants in there, and he said that they just had a fundraising day for Special Effect. From there I contacted Special Effect and we arranged to come down. They assessed Corey's needs and did a setup for him there, a few trial and error things, and then they gave us a setup to bring home and to trial, which we did, and he hasn't looked back really. He's really enjoyed it. He likes playing FIFA, but he has to win.
Oh, what a shot!
And he likes the racing games as well. So it's really given him a bit of independence to play the games himself, and it's just something else that he can do because his physical disability restricts him in so many other ways. It's nice that he can actually have the enjoyment of playing the games. Seeing him so happy, it just makes you feel good.
I'm Kerry, I'm Jada's mum. Jada is almost 9, has always wanted to play computer games but never been able to. Jada's got cerebral palsy and finds fine motor skills very difficult, so the hand controls are extremely difficult. She's now got switches, a large switch for the main jumping and shooting, and then the smaller switches and joysticks, which is good for her fine motor skill because she has to use a joystick. Once Jada got the equipment, that was her off, and her words were, "I'm now a gamer," and she's been playing it and having a time of her life. Also, it's something she can play with her friends and not be excluded. She's now in the mainstream, playing games with mainstream children. She's now like her friends, or her and her dad will sit and play football. It's just having fun, and it's lovely to watch, absolutely lovely to watch. I just think Special Effect are amazing, and what they've done for Jada, it's been amazing. And thank you so much.
before? Woo! There you go. We had the pleasure of speaking to two ambassadors from Autistica, charity based in the UK. They spoke about their journey into the games industry and what Autistica Play is.
My first favourite game that I'd probably say never changes just due to the impact it's had on me is Mass Effect 1. It's a game where I was one of those kids who would always go into Blockbusters, and literally all the games I owned on 360 were all mainly Blockbusters. So I was that kid like, achievement hunter, just gonna get games. And like one day, I played most of the games that were in the Blockbusters, but then I saw this one game that had this character right in the front of the cover, and I was just like, okay, I'll give it a try. And then I took it home, and 100 hours later, I was hooked, and I had to rent it 2 more times to play over about 200 hours at that point, after a month, and then I bought it, and I just kept playing, and overall, I played about 300 hours, and I was about 13 at the time. So although I had the time to do that, it's like for a 14-year-old to spend over 300 hours on one game, that's just like mad. But what it also did for me was, because I've got dyslexia and Asperger's, it kind of was my first step into learning how to read people's social signs, because in the game you have to socialise with 6 of your crew members and a few more crew members, but generally it focuses on 6, and it's like building friendships with them really helped me to kind of see signs and how to interact with people. So it's kind of a game that helped me socially, but also there was like a behind the scenes video to it, and in that video they were like, you can get a job in games, and I was like, what? I can work on games? And I was just like, from that moment on, I was like, I turned my whole kind of school education around. So I was like a kid that would just go in, come out, and then play games. But after seeing that video, that was about when I was in year 9 of school. So after that moment, I would literally actually start working at school, trying to make an effort. So I went from a grade E to a grade B by the end of school, and it's all thanks to Mass Effect. And it's a game that's always going to be my number 1 just because it impacted me so much.
I think sometimes people say that they're not good for kids, and in a way I kind of understand what they mean by maybe you shouldn't allow kids to play certain games from a young age, but I think that video games in general are very good because, for instance, when I was younger I really struggled with basic things like holding the pencil and anything that involved moving your hands in fine motor skills basically. And being able to play games, I was better with coordination with my hands anyway, because you're obviously moving your hands and pressing buttons and stuff when you're using a controller or using a keyboard. So it can teach you a lot of stuff, and it can teach you the value of teamwork as well, because some games you have to work as a team. And it kind of allows people to make friends when they might struggle anyway. So I think there's a lot of positive aspects of playing video games.
What I found is that as a kid, I wasn't isolated because I needed to be. I was isolated because my mum, I was diagnosed with Asperger's at a very young age. So my mum wanted to get me as much support as possible, because at the time, this was the 90s, where people were believing it's a disease and a virus, and it was really negative in the media. I'm very happy it's not as much anymore. I think at least by 75% maybe. But at the time, my mum was just no, my son needs this help, and she just got me it. But with that support that I got, it kind of didn't give me time to socialise. So using games is how I kind of connected to people. It's like the first few friends I ever got was playing cooperative games like Crash Bandicoot isn't technically a cooperative game, but you can pass it around and each person takes turns. And then as we went into the PS2 era and the 360 era and multiplayer started to become a more featured aspect and online play, that's where I was able to kind of connect to people and really make probably more friendships than I would in real life. It wasn't until college where I got a fine foundation in socialising, where I started to feel more confident in person to socialise. But till that point, it was very much thanks to games, and overall games just like taught me more than I would normally. Like, I'm not really a book reader. I'm very much someone who engages visually, and games are the definition of that through play and interaction. So they were just the perfect medium for me to learn things. It's like Civilization Revolution. I learned so much about different countries, cultures and war tactics. It was just like, wow, I did not know that.
Sometimes there's like, you can get lonely from like not like going out much or seeing people or whatever. So in that sense, like playing multiplayer games and you're able to find like a nice group of people to play with, you're kind of like socialising, whether or not it's in person. It's like, it doesn't really matter because you're still having fun, you're still socialising, make friends, etc. And also like in terms of like mental health, if you're feeling quite anxious or depressed, games can be a really good way to like help with that. Like I said, the reason why I play so many different types of games is because it depends on the mood that I'm in. So if I'm like in a mood where I just need to calm down, I will play something like Little Big Planet. If I'm like feeling kind of annoyed or something, I'll play a zombie game and like shoot loads of people and stuff. So, I like, it's a nice way to kind of like express yourself then.
So Autistica are an autism research charity. I think they are the UK's leading one. That's what I was last told when I last spoke to them. But regardless, what their whole goal is to improve the lives of autistic people, so happier, healthier lives for not just like specific areas, just in general. But what makes Autistica different than a lot of charities that I personally encountered is that they listen to their target audience, which is autistic people. What I'm specifically involved in with Autistica is hopefully if I can get this, Autistica Play, which is their video games initiative. So because like I have such a passion for games, I believe there can be so much good impact that can be made from games, and Autistica had the same mindset.
It's primarily focused on making the games industry more accessible and enjoyable to neurodiverse people, including obviously autism is the main one. So we go to events and we give talks, or we do campaigns where we basically talk about how to make your game industry or your games company more accessible, and how to focus on mental health for your autistic employees and stuff like that.
Because like I have such a passion for games, I believe there can be so much good impact that can be made from games, and Autistica had the same mindset. Because like before 2019, they did a lot of research behind the scenes, and it was only in about March, April time that they started Autistica Play, which is all about basically 3 set goals. So it's all about getting the players involved. So there's so many players who are autistic, and there's not like characters characters in games. It's only recently they're starting to get the representation needed. So Autistica want to meet with developers and kind of raise that kind of awareness with them and kind of get more positive representation in games. But they also want to raise the profile of talent in games for autistic and neurological people, because what you find with people on the spectrum is they have other like mental health and neurological like matters involved, so like ADHD, if I've said that correct, and like anxiety. So instead of just like saying, you know, they've obviously got the priority of autistic people, but because of how they approach the industry, it's very inclusive and very accessible. So their goal is to basically help any talent that kind of goes into both those categories and just make it a much more positive and accessible industry for them.
And that's it for this episode. Next time,